Okay. Hello, this is the start of AP Physics 1 review, and in this video we'll be talking about what AP Physics 1 is, how to understand what's going to be tested on it, and the changes for the 2024-2025 AP test. So first, with AP Physics 1 is more algebra based, so this doesn't mean you need a calculus requirement to actually take it. But on top of this, to understand more of it, you have the course exam description. The course exam description, for some people, this might be your guys' first AP, so you guys not know what it is. But the course exam description is basically what College Board shows to students what they want to know. And if I could pull it up, it gives you examples for these. These are unit openers. These are what they show the units at a glance, and they show what is overall tested, what skills they need that are going to be tested on the AP. But to go into example for one of them, for unit 1, it's all about kinematics, and normally it'll show around the exam weighting, so around what percent, 10 to 15 for kinematics, will be tested on the AP exam. For this, what I recommend you guys to do is not to worry about it too much, but to understand that some units do have a more weight on the AP test than other ones do. So when studying for the actual AP, you might want to look into that and focus towards which ones have the higher AP exam weightage. And so, an example of this would be right here with unit 1.1. Unit 1.1 is scalars and vectors, and normally here it tells you the learning objective, essential knowledge, and suggested skills. It will be like this for all of them, and we'll look first into the learning objective. The learning objective is basically what is trying to be taught in this subtopic. For this one here, it's to describe the scalar and vector quantity using magnitude and direction. So it's basically telling us that what we want to learn out of this is to demonstrate the differences between scalars and vectors with using magnitude and direction. On top of this, it tells us stuff that we need to know. Not everything we need to know, but stuff that can help us, like how that scalars are measured by magnitude only, while vectors are measured by both magnitude and direction. Or another thing is that distance and speed are both scalar quantities. And then on top of this, the last thing is that the suggested skills, like how this 1.A is that you want to create diagrams to show physical situations, or 3B are appropriate law definition to make a claim. So what this is showing are these are skills that you want to get from unit 1.1 that should be demonstrated through this, and that these could be quizzed by your teacher, or on top of this be quizzed by the AP exam graders. But normally, what the best thing to do around this is that whenever you start a new unit, or even before that, you look at the course exam description and understand what you're getting yourself into. Because to understand what you're getting yourself into is probably the biggest thing, because it allows you to take a grasp beforehand when your teacher actually starts teaching it, rather than trying to understand it with your teacher as long as you go. It just gives you a small boost, but it isn't really necessary. But the thing that is necessary is when you're studying for the AP exam is to look over this and understand that you have to be able to do all of these, if not most of them, on your exam. So you go through and understand what do you understand, and focus on what you don't understand. But along with this, from the 2024-2025, there are other exam changes. For AP Physics 1, there has been 8 units from an increase of 7. The reason for this is that there's an introduction of fluids from AP Physics 2. What this means also is that if you decide to take AP Physics 2, that means you don't have to learn fluids for next year. But fluids in AP Physics 2 aren't that notoriously difficult rather than other stuff that could have came. So it's not as bad, but it just makes it a little bit more of a struggle to actually understand it. And on top of this, other course exam descriptions are they have connections like rotational translational motion. And on top of this, they have significant learning objectives that are required towards power, because beforehand, power is something you needed to know in AP Physics 1, but now it's something that you actually need to know. It's actually going to be tested a lot. And then the other ones, they're just specific learning examples. It's just showing that there's more significance towards other stuff that hasn't been tested as much yet, and that's why it's a revised coursework frame. And on top of this, there's going to be new greater ranges of questions. Overall, what this course change is showing is that there's an introduction of fluids into this, and that there's going to be more differences towards other AP exams. This is the one we're going to be taking in 2024 2025 season. And so this isn't anything bad. It's just that when you're practicing for the APs, when you're going to be doing practice APs, it's going to be a little bit difficult and different from what you're going to actually be taking just because of these course exam descriptions and how they are going to be a little bit more critiqued due to the course framework changing. And on top of this, there's also exam updates. How that there is only 40 MCQs from the 50 that we had, and that there's no multi-select questions anymore in the AP Physics 1, which is relatively good because for some people the multi-select questions are overall the harder part. But on top of this, with the 40, with down to 40 multiple choice questions, that means you only have 80 minutes to be able to do Section 1 MCQs. It's almost a win-win situation here because we get the 10 MCQs lowered down, but at the same time we only get the 10 minutes taken down. So our timing still is overall going to be around the same time for each of the questions and everything, and the same strategies apply. That if you're gonna take some time over a question, skip it because you don't get marked for skipping, you get marked for having it wrong on the AP. So it's always fine to guess. It's just that you don't want to be able to mess up all your other questions because you're stuck on one. On top of this, the major changes here are in the FIQ part. What FIQ is are few response questions and normally on most APs, and they're just other questions that you have to explain your thought and write it down for the grader. So the changes here is that we only have four response questions from the five that we have before. And on top of this, we have an increase from 10 minutes. So what this is showing already is that these FIQs overall are going to be harder than the ones that have been tested before. Because we only have four, but on top of that we have 100 minutes, so 20 minutes around for each. And these new FIQs will already be shown now. For any APs, the FIQs will already be known beforehand. So this is good to understand because you could even do some more research beforehand. Or when you're actually taking the exam, or if you're self-studying, I prefer you guys to be able to actually study these beforehand if it's able. If not, then you just go along with YouTube channels like this or other ones and just follow along with them. And then once you get to the point for the FIQs that you know a unit will be tested on the FIQ for, you study that more heavily. For people actually taking the exam and taking the class for it, go along with your teacher. But whenever you get to an exam or a unit that is gonna be an FIQ question, for those it's suggested, or I suggest for you guys to be able to actually focus on that and try understand them more harder and do practice FIQs when you're in that unit and after when you're also doing the studies for the AP exam. Overall, AP Physics 1, it isn't that hard of a unit, even though it's notoriously SID for. The reason that I'm saying this is because it's just a different way of thinking. On your problems, it's mostly going to be word problems that you have to solve using relationships of different equations to each other. And so, if you just understand the equations and how they relate to each other, what they actually mean, what all the equations are, and how you're able to understand the connection between one to the other, and how you'll be able to find the one missing value, it shouldn't be too hard. And for the FIQ, I'll get into that more when we get closer to that, or a little bit soon, actually, I'm thinking. But for those, it's just to be able to show your work out to your grader. Your grader should be able to understand your entire work throughout and it shouldn't have to make any inferences. So what I suggest from this is that anything you're thinking about, anything that you do mentally, calculations in your head, just write it down. You have the 10 extra minutes, so I think you should be able to write it down, whatever is in your head. And so for some of you guys, this might be your first AP. If it's your first AP, good luck. It isn't as scary as you think. Personally, for me, when I was taking my first APs, I was scared, but it was also that I prepared a lot for it in advance, which I think is the best thing to do for these. Just, I know everyone says it to not procrastinate, but it's really important not to procrastinate and to be able to study. If you guys have half semesters, be able to study halfway through your second semester, a little bit before that. If it isn't your first AP and you know what you're doing, welcome back. Yep, another AP, but yeah, AP Physics 1. Good luck. I'll be helping you guys. I'll be able um to be able to go into these subtopics more specifically, be able to do unit reviews. I'm looking for some practice stuff to be able to give out, and overall just help you guys for this AP exam. Thank you. I hope you guys have a really good day.